So I was lucky enough to borrow the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro recently, and now I've got this, the Tiger 850 Sport. So it only seems sensible to bring it back to the same place that I filmed my Tiger 900 video in and give you a bit of a head-to-head comparison. Because if you're thinking about buying a Tiger, you might be wondering, should I save a couple of grand and go for the 850 Sport, or is it worth paying for the extra spec and equipment? So in this video, we'll talk about the key similarities and differences between the 850 and the 900 lineup, and at the end, I'll give you a few reasons that you might want to consider the Tiger 850 Sport. But before we get started, if you're new here and you want to see more motorcycle reviews like this and the latest motorcycle news right here on YouTube, then please do remember to hit subscribe. So let's start with the engine, and despite the different name, the 850 and the 900, mechanically the engine's actually the same. So it's the same inline 3 layout, same capacity, same T-plane crank that gives it a rougher, more growly feel than previous generations of Tiger. But in the 850 Sport, it gets a slightly different tune that's achieved electronically. In this bike, you'll get 80 odd horsepower. On the Tiger 900, it's 90 odd, so there's about 10 horsepower difference. And the torque is different as well. There's about 5 Newton meters less of peak torque in the 850 Sport, although that peak is produced slightly lower in the rev range. Honestly, for me, they feel very similar for day-to-day riding, and it wasn't really like I jumped on this bike and thought, oh, it feels underpowered versus the Tiger 900. You know, unless you're really gassing it and you're at the top end of the rev range, I doubt most people would notice the difference. You still get pretty much all of the benefits, like the T-plane crank with that extra feel lower in the revs. It gives it a lovely exhaust note as well. A slip assist clutch with a nice light lever action, a split radiator for better cooling and ducts that direct the hot air away from you. Honestly, this is a big tick for the Tiger 850 Sport for me. I like that engine in the Tiger 900 and it feels pretty much the same here. Another big strength of the Tiger 850 Sport is the braking, so you get the same Brembo Stylemma 4-pot radially mounted monoblock calipers as the rest of the Tiger 900 lineup. For a bike at this price point, I mean, normally you'd find them on Sports Nakeds, more premium bikes. It's really good value for money, and then combined with that, you've got braided brake hoses as standard, and you get a radial master cylinder. I don't think it's the exact same one as the Tiger 900s, but still, at this price point, that's a really good braking setup. As for how it feels on the road, it's not super crisp on the initial bite, although you might want that if you're doing a bit of off-roading, a bit more progression, but there's loads of power, plenty of feel to it, and like I say, a big strength of the Tiger 850 Sport. Now, in terms of suspension, this is where you start to get a bit of differentiation between all the models. So on the 850 Sport, you've got a Marzocchi upside down fork. There's no adjustability there, and then a Marzocchi shock at the rear that has a preload adjuster with a remote knob, which is great if you do have a passenger that hops on and off. You won't need to get your tools out in order to adjust it, but otherwise it's a pretty simple setup. On the Rally and Rally Pro, you get Showa suspension, more travel there, and it's fully adjustable. On the GT Pro, you actually get an electronically adjustable shock, so you can make those preload adjustments from the switchgear and see all the information on the dash, and you can also make damping tweaks as well. Really, here you've got to ask yourself how much you're going to use the adjustability, the extra travel, or the ride quality. Personally, when I get press bikes, you know, I like to set them up for my weight and make sure that they're properly ready to test, but after that I don't really tweak it that much. So if you're like me, you know, the Tiger 850 Sport might be sufficient. 250 mil of travel on the Rally models as well. That really is plenty for an adventure bike. This will be more than enough for gravel roads and easygoing trails, but if you're going to push it more, go over some bigger undulations, trying to tackle some more challenging trails, then that might be the one for you. It is also worth adding that the Rally models get spoked wheels and a 21-inch front, so that ought to make them better for off-roading as well. The electronically adjustable shock on the GT Pro is obviously a strength if you're riding solo in the week without luggage, but maybe at the weekend you put some bags on or hard cases, maybe you take a passenger. If you're constantly changing that configuration, then that's a massive benefit. In terms of electronics, this is a far simpler bike, so you do get a 5-inch TFT dash. It's got the same design style to it. You can change the layouts, you can change the brightness, the day and night modes, but the functionality of it is far reduced. You don't get that phone connectivity, and I don't think that it's an option in the accessories catalog, so if you you want nav, if you want to be able to take phone calls and messaging and control your intercom, all that stuff, you're going to have to look at one of the Tiger 900s. You also just get 2 riding modes on this bike, so road and rain. ABS is the same, but the throttle map and TC are specific to each riding mode. The Tiger 900s, on the other hand, they get lean sensitive rider aids, so traction control and ABS, owing to a 6-axis IMU. And I think it's the Rally Pro that gets 6 riding modes, so off-road and off-road pro and road and rain and sport. I think there's a personalized one as well, so if you really want to tailor the bike to your preferences, then you're going to have to go for one of those more expensive models. There's no cruise control here, there's no heated seats, no heated grips as standard. You'd have to spec those as accessories, and as you pay more for the pro models, you get a lot of that stuff as standard. But for a lot of people, they want the simplest possible bike at the lowest price point with good mechanical stuff, so a good engine, good suspension, good braking, and they're not bothered about the rest, and this really delivers on that. You might also want to consider the seat height as well. So in its tallest setting on this bike, it's 830mm, and you can notch it down to 810mm, so as an adventure bike, that's pretty low. And I believe there's also a low seat in the accessories catalogue which takes another 20mm off it, so you could actually get it down to 790mm, which is basically like a street twin or something very easygoing like that. The Rally is 870 in its tallest and 850 in its lowest. Again, you can fit the low seat onto those as well, so you can take another 20mm off, but they're never going to be as low as this bike. So if you're short in the leg and you prefer to be able to flat foot your bikes, then this is the obvious choice. So that's the most obvious reason to buy this bike. If you're short and you want an adventure bike, you're going to struggle to find something as low as 790mm like this with the low seat option. Obviously the price as well, at 9,300, it's a couple of grand cheaper than the GT model. The Rally starts at 12 grand up to like 13.5 for the Rally Pro, and essentially you're getting a lot of the same bike. There are some areas in which the finish feels a bit less premium, stuff like the headlight mounts here, those are metal on the Tiger 900s. I think the paintwork and graphics look a bit better on the 900. The seat covering is a little more simplistic and doesn't have that nice stitching and stuff, and some of the hardware like the brake pedal and the gear shifter, those aren't quite as nicely made. We also talked about the electronics and tech, but if you're not really after the most fancy looking bike, if you're not bothered about electronics and you just want a simple riding experience, then this represents a great saving over the Tiger 900s. And I can honestly say that I agree in some situations that stripping away that stuff makes you really appreciate the sound of the engine, the feel of it, the quality of the brakes, the quality of the riding position, and also your surroundings and all that kind of thing, and you're not as distracted by the bike. And I think for just getting out and riding and enjoying your time on the bike, this would be a great choice. It's when you're doing like long distance and touring that perhaps some of those creature comforts start to become more beneficial. Also, for anyone who says Triumph paint jobs are a bit boring, yes, the tank's grey, but you can either get blue or red, so if you want something a bit more colourful than the usual Triumph finishes, the Tiger 850 Sport has you covered. So that's it, the Tiger 850 Sport. What a cracking bike. The same quality of engine, the same quality of braking, decent chassis, decent suspension setup, but less of the stuff that you might not need. And I've really enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't have ever tried the Tiger 900, so I'm glad they rebranded it as the 850 Sport and gave it a bit more of its own identity. I hope you've enjoyed this video as well. Let me know if you've got questions down in the comments below. And if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.